Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. I hope you had a good lunch and feel refreshed and ready for another exciting couple of sessions. It's a jam-packed schedule this afternoon, so stay tuned. I'm delighted today to be joined by two stalwarts of the international production community. Marco, to my right, runs Banijay Entertainment, a huge global company producing all sorts of shows around the world. We all know Jane Turton, Chief Exec at All3 Media. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of what is going on in the production world and hopefully get their takes on some of the big issues. We've got 35 minutes as well, so I'm going to do as little talking as I can to make sure these guys do the majority. Jane, I want to start with yourself. You've been in the job for 10 years, 2015. Back then, the TV industry looked a lot different. And Marco, we're going to talk to you about this in a minute as well. How has the industry changed over that 10-year period? I mean, fundamental question, I think, probably. How much harder is it to make money from the TV industry now compared to back then?
Look, it's changed a lot. I guess we have far more customers. We have different customers. That's a big change. You know, if I look at this year's numbers, Netflix is our single biggest buyer. And that certainly wouldn't have been the case 10 years ago. That's positive. That's a very positive thing to be able to say we have new customers and they are spending real money on high-quality content. So I think that's a massive positive. We make the mistake sometimes, don't we? And it was Tim's point earlier of being super negative about today. Our business is bigger today than it's ever been. We make more programs than we've ever made. We employ more people. And we have more customers and we sell more shows to them. So I'm not completely insane. I appreciate that there are massive challenges, and not least, actually, when you look at some of those creators who were on the platform earlier, they just live in a slightly different world. We have to learn from that. But a lot of what's happened in the last 10 years has been incredibly positive.
And Marco, same question to yourself. I think maybe just give a bit of context as to the size of Banijay and what you guys are doing in your answer, if you can, because you've grown. 2015, you were quite a different company to probably what you are today.
Well, in 2015, it was a different company, Banijay. Now we are scripted leader in Europe. We have a big distribution company. We have 130 company. In 2015, I think we will have maybe 8 or 10. So it's totally different company. Okay? And I totally agree with Jane. We should be positive. And there are a lot of things that they change. Some stay the same. One thing that maybe changed a lot compared to 2015, that maybe 2015 was much easier to launch a new show and to be successful. Now to create and retain IP is much more difficult because it's much more difficult to create a new big format. It's much more difficult to retain IP because with the platform it's difficult to retain IP. There is also something still same. The pitch are the same. Your producer, they keep saying, well, you know, I have a pressure on margin, all this kind of thing, you know, but at the end of the day, the dynamic and the business model doesn't change a lot. We have more opportunity today in this market because there is not only OTT platform, there are also social platform. There are better ways, let's say, to test your stuff. And there is also more opportunity that having such a big, let's say, footprint, you can attract more talent to join you and to become a kind of, let's say, natural consolidation, being an international production company, while before you have to invest much more equity. Okay. That's another difference that I can see.
We've seen the industry, like you say, your industry specifically is, your company has grown rapidly over that period. We're coming off 12, 18 months of quite a lot of challenges, I think it's fair to say, hitting the industry, not just in the UK, but globally. We've had the US market finding its feet again, let's put it like that. We've got linear viewing sort of in decline as well. We've got the YouTube thing going on, which we'll talk about later, and we've seen production costs surging as well. How have you been able to pivot through those changes? What has been sort of the constant that you've looked to focus on?
What you say, it's all true, but we can benefit for our, let's say, internal structure, because a production company usually it's it's a company that has, let's say, 75%, 80% of flexible job. So you can manage, let's say, the increase of cost. You can manage also to reduce in the country or in the general where they are not so hot. And then about what you say, it's true that US is facing a big challenge, and it's going to be a big opportunity for UK market that is going to become even more important, because the first airport after LA is Heathrow always. So definitely here there are on this market more and more opportunity. YouTube, it's an opportunity, definitely. In UK this year we make 25% more in monetization in YouTube. There is, as I said before, there are pressure on margin, and there are a declining market, especially if you look, let's say, the commercial channel. But there is also a lot of change. For instance, one of the more significant one for us, it was the fact that now Netflix, it will bundle a big commercial channel like TF1. And for us, if I want to look, let's say, not just, let's say, the glass half, if I have to look for us, let's say, the glass half full, is that they need the content that there are in TF1, that there are our content. And the other side, maybe they would spend less in an original local content. As you know, we are in 22 territories, so the adaptation of our IP and our format is extremely important. But I think that's going to be an opportunity for us, because it can give a longer life to our content and to our IP.
And Joan, similar sort of question. I mean, the machinations of the US industry have been ongoing for 2-3 years at least. I mean, we live in a constant period, an industry that is changing constantly as well. But how have you adapted? What has been the focus on making sure that you're still making those revenues that you need to, and you need to see them grow?
And delivering growth, exactly.
Indeed.
So I guess there are two things you're doing. You're growing your business. That's clearly critical. That's the theme of the conference. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. And that is largely around talent. It was interesting listening to Jeff and Joe and Kevin talk about IP. Of course it's IP. IP is the product, but the talent creates that product. And I think talent is still extremely important. The three we saw from the creator community, they're talent. These people that we employ to be brilliant are brilliant, and they are creating IP, and the talent is in the hierarchy. I always think of things that lead to success. I always put talent first and IP second. It's a close second, but I think talent is really important. That's a lot about how you grow. But what you're trying to do is create something that's resilient. So that's your other sort of theme, I think, in a sort of role like we have. So you're trying to create something that's a portfolio of parts that in its aggregate is resilient. So it's what you're doing on YouTube, it's what you're doing in Germany, it's what you're doing in scripted, it's what you're doing in non-script, in distribution, how you're enhancing your margins, what you're doing in terms of taking something like The Traitors onto the theatre stage and turning it into a musical, so that adjacent space. So what you're doing all the time, I think, is you're creating the growth engine, but it has to be resilient. And in our case, and actually the same in Marco's, these are highly levered businesses. They have banks sitting behind with shareholders sitting alongside, and you have to be able to sit there and say, it's not a sort of flash in the pan, 2025, it's a good year, but so was 24, and so is 26, and 27, and 28. And if you can't show resilience, to sort of answer your question, and the ability to move, to adjust to the market, then you don't succeed. So it's growth for the long term is really important.
Do you think, is that getting harder, especially given the rise of YouTube?
No, I think it's getting easier.
For you guys to get involved in that?
Yeah, I think disruption causes opportunity, creates opportunity. I think if you have the talent, back to my original point, and the talent's, creating the product, it's more complex and you have to be more sophisticated. Scale helps, without a shadow of a doubt, because you have to have know-how and leverage. But if you have that heady cocktail, the alchemy is to make that long-term success. And I think, I personally think, and again, I'm not some sort of completely insane over-optimist, but I do think disruption partnering with the people we saw on the stage earlier rather than viewing them as the bitter enemy. And their interesting point, by the way, if you think about it, was just their obsession with audience. Their understanding of audience was phenomenal. And that was a lesson that we should all walk away and think in our B2B model. Christ, that's a bit like, wow, I don't think we understand audience perhaps as well as they do. I shouldn't say that, but there will be examples of that. So anyway, long-winded answer to your question, but I think it gives opportunity as opposed mostly with some risk attached, of course.
You mentioned scale, and I'll get onto scale in a sec. The other interesting thing, I mean, you guys agree on quite a lot of things from what I've read and from what I've gathered from previous conversations. The thing that does differ in terms of the way that your companies operate is ownership. How does that come into sort of your day-to-day operation? You know, you've got Redbird behind you now. What does that mean from a scaling point of view, perhaps? I mean, we've seen all the ITV Studios discussions. What does that mean for a company like All3 that is looking to grow and has got a backer that wants that growth to come within a defined period? So yeah, so our shareholders, obviously Redbird IMI, and this is a very well-capitalised shareholder, so that is a very good thing. So the answer to the simple answer to your question is good. We have shareholders with money, and they have an ambition, and Jeff said this earlier, and they want to grow the business. They haven't bought it to watch it get smaller, obviously. I think Jeff is probably nodding. So they've bought it to grow it, and I'm very hopeful, and this is a conversation that we're having, that we will become much more active again in that inorganic acquisition space. You know, we've only been owned for 12 months, and we've been very busy doing other things. You've seen the things we're doing. We're doing a lot of organic, quasi-organic, and some startup stuff around scripted in particular. But it would be lovely to come back and sit here in 12 months' time and say we've done 3 big deals. That's the plan. And ITV Studios, would that be of interest? What, whether we're buying them or they're buying us, or probably you buying them. Let's say that. I honestly, I'm not going to answer that question. That's pure speculation, I think, Richard, on your part. Okay. Marco, what about you? You going to buy ITV Studios?
Same.
We tried. Okay.
This is Julian Bellamy there.
Yeah, Julian. Let's talk about the programming, because I mean that is the fundamental. That's still the core of the business. You guys are doing theatrical, you're doing live events, you're doing all sorts of other activity, but it still derives from the IP that you're producing, and most of that, I think it's fair to say, is still going onto a streamer or it's going onto a broadcaster. We'll break it into unscripted and scripted. Let's talk about unscripted first. You, Marco, I mean, I don't know how many formats you own, hundreds and hundreds, and we all know them, probably MasterChef, Survivor, etc., etc. What do you make of the format industry at the moment? What have the streamers added to the format industry? Are they a good thing? Are we seeing sort of that country-by-country approach that allowed the format industry to sort of blossom into what it has become, with the streamers being involved? Or is there a slightly different sort of evolving process going on there in terms of sort of buying country-by-country?
Yes, exactly right. The last point that you make is correct. It's changed a lot country by country, definitely. So the streamers, they are much more active in English-speaking country than in other countries. In the other country, they tend to do more adaptation. And you can see with Too Hot to Handle, Love is Blind, The Circle, and many other. Last year, we launched 80 new shows with streamers in OTT platform, and 240 new shows, not scripted. But I should say, as I mentioned before, that today to create a new IP is very difficult. And I believe one of the things that it changed a lot, and now we are pretty much on this vein, that you need to invest much more than in the past. You need to really show to you can't go to pitch with a piece of paper. You can't go without having a talent attached. Today you have to go there, showing that you invest money, that you create new stuff that is done by a very talented creative person, sometimes with an attached talent. And now we are changing a lot. We are moving much more in this direction. First of all, because we perceive a little bit more of appetite from some broadcasting client to have a new show, because they can't just rely in MasterChef, Traitors, The Voice, and the other shows. Yep. So we are investing much more. And we try, let's say, to partner with them in order, let's say, to better to let them understand that it's a benefit for both sides. For us, then, it means also to retain IP. Because if we want, as you mentioned before, we are launching this new division, Banijay Live, and it's an organic, let's say, development that we have. We bought 2, 3 quite big company and a live event, and we are launching also live event based on our IP. But it's previous IP. So it's Peaky Blinders, it's Black Mirror, it's Survivor Camp, it is kind of thing, you know. And we believe that there is a big opportunity for us to do in all our territory. And we saw a lot of appetite on doing this. It's a different business. It's pretty much a direct-to-consumer business. So there is also a kind of DNA that has to change in our company, and we are working on this. But the big issue for the future is to retain IP. I mean, that's the reason you have to invest. And this is a big difference compared to the past. And this is,
would you say you've been pushed into the, I mean, is this a move that you've made because you have to, essentially? Because you can see the revenues that you're getting
exactly as Jane was telling before, if you want to grow and keep growing, not just to stay flat or resilient, we believe that today it's much easier. Well, the market is the market what it is, okay? So it's difficult to have more commission and to have more money from our traditional client, like public and commercial broadcasters. So we need to create other way in order, let's say, to create business and profit and value for our shareholder. And we believe that's an area that we can work. And I think that if we look in the future, because we have a very solid shareholder that they have an industrial vision, I believe that we need to become not just more a production company, but a media company and a kind of mini major that it can, let's say, rely on a big IP and create a new IP with a different model compared to it was in the past. And here there is a bit of conflict between, let's say, the American model that they're looking at us like a pure producer for hiring, compare the model that you have here in UK, where the producer, they can retain the IP. And this is a big debate today, a little bit everywhere, not just in UK and US.
Good stuff. And Jane, I mean, exactly taking Marco's point, you know, you're spinning off this IP, most of this IP that you're now putting onto theatre or to live events or whatever it might be, putting onto YouTube it's live, you know, it's old, it's been commissioned generally by a broadcaster, by a streamer. For you guys, has it got harder to launch a show? I mean, this goes for unscripted and scripted, but you know, the UK format market, is it as resilient and as strong as it was 10 years ago, let's say? Has the risk aversity of broadcasters impacted your business?
I think it's got more difficult. I think at times when, you know, it's economically challenging, people tend to be more risk averse. We know that we have a sort of weird habit in the UK of beating ourselves over the head about reboots, but actually reboots are just a sign of successful IP. So the positive of a reboot is it's a resilient piece of IP. The negative of the reboot is it's blocking a slot, rather crudely put, or a place in a pile of disaggregated content and stopping something new happen. So I think it is more difficult. I'm sure that's right. We aren't as heavy, sadly, in format as Marco. We're putting a lot of development into it. We've actually started some sort of development pods to try to really gear up and leverage some of our big producing talent in a way that helps us to innovate more. Because we would love more format. I mean, the thing Marco didn't mention is if you're facing an enormous fat deficit on scripted, you don't tend to be facing that in format, non-scripted. So, and particularly those entertainment shows. And I just love the thought, if you go to bed at night and a foreign jurisdiction is showing your show and the format fee is coming through in the post and you're sitting there the next morning a little bit richer.
Tick, 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 tick.
It's a glorious model. The quality of earnings are lovely. So from a purely economic perspective, they're super interesting. But they are a rare and precious thing and difficult. So
you're putting more money into creating new formats?
Yes.
Where do you think those new formats are going to sit? Because broadcasters, well, yeah.
Well, the answer is broadcasters. They still want new formats. I mean, there's nothing that will get you promoted quicker in a broadcaster than commissioning a very good, successful new format. There is still considerable upside in that B2B model to the commission of the new format. So there, I think there's an interesting space which is, actually I think, Marco, you've got an example of this, but where people are using those social media platforms to test and launch format in a way that, you know, is interesting because the data analytics are so good. You can see so much about audience behavior. You can then iterate, as they were discussing earlier. And again, I think we're all getting better at that. We're doing that through Little Dot and through some of the production companies. So that's one other route. And then the other route, which, as Marco said, we possibly like less intuitively because you give away the rights, is the streamer world. The good thing about the streamer world with format is you are still potentially making multiple versions, but for one streaming platform, because there will be examples where there are multiple jurisdictions buying different versions of the same idea, and so you are producing them, especially if you have a footprint like Banijay's.
Should we talk about the YouTube format that you took, Let's Play Ball? So it's launching at MIPCOM in Cannes.
Yeah, we are working quite a lot on this space.
And this is
for all the reasons that we just mentioned. You know, I think that there is a discussion also before this morning about this. First of all, because it's a fantastic platform to test, to launch, and to readapt our stuff. We are now we made in the last, let's say, 1.5 years a big investment in order, let's say, to move all our let's say catalog in conjunction with AWS in a big let's say cloud, where we can index the cloud and we can have a better searching for all our creative around the world, in order, let's say, to have a better use of our finished tape, to create it, to clip new stuff. AI give you a lot of opportunity, let's say, to monetize this that we are not before. But what we are really doing now in French and here in UK, we are trying to launch, let's say, original, also in YouTube. Let's see if that's work. There are many others that are trying to do this, but it's still a space where, you know, I think that social, it's important, but not just, it's important for the audience, it's important for the reach that you have, it's important also for what you can create around this with your IP, or in order to monetize your IP through other ancillary product.
And this is, I mean, this is AI powered. This is essentially using AI to...
Yeah, this is the part that we are investing quite significant amount of money in the last 1.5 years. As I say, on one side for what we already own, but also in order to create a new stuff.
Yeah. And let's talk more broadly about AI. I mean, we heard in a couple of the other earlier sessions you know, it's going to upend everything to some extent. How are you, I mean, what's your day-to-day use of AI at the moment in terms of, you know, Banijay? How important is it and what's it going to do? Because we heard, you know, the cost is going to bring production costs down, which is theoretically good for you guys, yeah? But then it also opens it up. It democratizes the creation of content to some extent. So is it a net gain for Banijay, do you think?
So far, it's a net gain. So far. I could say tomorrow a little bit more on next week, because we will have a conference about AI and how to use it. And we have a specific team that is working in AI in order to have the better use of the AI in all our function, but not only in creation, like pitch, like post-production, like dubbing, like subtitle, but also in finance, in post-production schedule, in legal, in many other, you know. So far, you know, for us, it's positive, let's say, the advent of the AI. Let's see in the future, because one of the things that maybe the bigger risk for us, it's always the same, that because we are so far pretty much a cost-plus business, if you reduce a lot of cost, you reduce also your profit. And that is the biggest risk of AI.
Yeah.
That for sure it's already there, maybe with animation, kids show. Let's see in the future what's happened. It's going to be more difficult for Big Brother. It could be much easier if you do, let's say, maybe an action movie.
And Jane, I mean, same question. What's your sort of long-term take on AI? How much good is it going to do the All3Media business?
So like Marco, we're using it in most functional areas, sort of behind the camera. In terms of production, every producer will be using it at some stage in development at the moment. we're obviously using it in things like post-production, audio in particular, and some creative enhancement. I mean, the example I like is Endeavour, which was the movie we made for Nat Geo and Disney, where we voiced the diaries of Shackleton and his crew with using an Ukrainian voice model, AI model, from little excerpts from BBC interviews that they'd given when they got back to London after escaping that horrendous journey. So that was just a very cute bit of use of AI that really enhanced the film. Wasn't about cost, actually, it was about enhancement. But give or take, I would say pretty much everyday use, learning very fast. You know, it's definitely something that could potentially bring costs down. Certainly in some of the obvious areas like recreate, you know, true crime, etc. But to Marco's point, I think the answer is it makes the shows more affordable. Does it make the margins higher? That's the sort of interesting challenge. Or do we just end up losing margin because of it, because of the cost plus point?
Yeah. We've only got 5 minutes left, so we need to talk about scripted and the drama side of things again, because we've, especially in the UK, you know, we've seen scripted production costs going up year on year on year. That inflation just doesn't seem to be stopping particularly. And we've seen a stabilisation, at least, in terms of how much you can get from the buyers. The US has been pretty lukewarm, I think it's fair to say, in terms of a co-production partner. How do you see that situation changing? Does that mean, you know, is the UK at least back at an equilibrium where the industry is more or less stable, do you think?
Well, everybody knows the gap's got bigger between the cost and the funding that comes through from your sort of anchor broadcaster. And that continues. Inflation in cost outstrips inflation in license fee. So the traditional route of sort of beating a path to the public service broadcaster's door, having a show commissioned, and then bridging it with a combination of a tax break and co-production money, and getting, you know, at least leaving yourself only with a couple of years of deficit to recoup, is long since gone. We're now looking into very long recoupment cycles.
Do you think that's a problem? Because I mean, I hear that from distributors all the time. That length is getting much
Yes,
longer.
it's a problem.
Is it a house of cards, do you think?
I don't know what that means. I think that was a drama, though, wasn't it? I don't think it's a house of cards in that it's about to collapse. I think there are solutions to it, maybe AI, possibly something to do with an additional high-end tax credit or an enhanced high-end tax credit for that band between 1 and 3 million. If the Exchequer looks kindly on that, which is some work that's been done by all of us as a sort of community of producers. Definitely, we're sensing that the US co-production market is coming back. That's helpful. And I think we've got to start looking for cleverer funding models as well. So I think, you know, we're looking more and variously at some, dare I say it, sort of brand partnerships coming in, clever sort of windowing, cleverer things that we can do subsequent to the original broadcast. So I think there's a whole heap of stuff. It's complicated, and I think it takes muscle to be able to work it out. And that was my point of earlier, which is the complexity of the current market tends to play well if you're a big and sophisticated producer. It's quite tough, and there's a reason that most drama of any scale is being made by big producers. It's quite tough if you're a one-man shop in a garret in Soho, coming up with a funding formula all on your own for something as big as that risk.
Yeah. And Mark, I mean, you obviously, you know, you're working, as Jane is, in multiple European countries and in the States as well on dramas. What's your sort of, can you sum up your take on the scripted sector at the moment? Is it in a good place in terms of the way that you're able to fund it and the ability to keep funding it in terms of the demand from buyers?
First of all, it's a growing market, scripted definitely. Also because the big demand in streamers, at least in terms of absolute term, is for scripted, and they're looking also for a big show, and they want, let's say, to launch a new market. So scripted, I think that's in a fantastic momentum. There is a little bit of competition about tax credit among countries. Before it was only, let's say, Bulgaria, Canada, now it's Spain, you know, now it's Italy, Germany, Poland, UK as well, you know. And I think that we need to be careful because I saw some example where tax credit is big, also the cost rises a lot,
Yeah.
and that's create
Causes
a
the
big
inflation.
issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's something that as a producer we need to have to be responsible on this because then we can complain about the cost. Yes, I think that we are pretty much very happy about our production at scripted. We are a little bit less than 1 billion. Mainly in Europe. We have a strong scripted business here as well in UK. So it's fine. And then maybe there will be, what we can see also in other countries that the commercial channel, they are commissioning less and less scripted because it's too expensive for them, while the public broadcaster, they have a quota that they have to spend there, and you know, it's not so convenient anymore for the commercial broadcaster in many countries for cost per hour to spend such a huge amount of money for just 1 hour show. And so there are opportunity for us in order, let's say, to go into and try to retain IP, to use the format maybe in other countries. So there are more opportunity on this sense for a producer.
Good stuff. We are nearly out of time. I want to wrap up with a question about YouTube. It's been mooted and talked about a lot as a platform for legacy IP. You guys are doing loads with Little Dot. Banijay is doing a lot as well in terms of putting clips and shows onto YouTube. Let's fast forward 5 years or 6 years, because this is every 2 years. So 6 years' time, we're sat here again. Do you think there's a world in which Banijay will commission a show, fund a show, let's say a scripted show, put it straight onto YouTube and be able to monetize it sufficiently to make a commercial success of it?
I think so. Not now, definitely. You know, there is, there is many way and clever way also to fund show, as Jane was saying before. So today, for instance, one of the big barrier that you have is that there are many commercial channels that don't want to share nothing with YouTube because they consider YouTube like the worst enemy. And but YouTube is making 50 billion. Revenues growing more than 50% per year. So you have to deal with them, with this platform. So maybe in the future when more linear channel, they understand that if we want, let's say, to keep going, to stay on the market and survive in this market, they have also to deal and try to monetize with YouTube. Maybe there will be a way, not just maybe to have a pure, let's say, show in YouTube, but to share as a window with them. Okay. Like today is with the streamers in many cases. Interesting.
And Jane, your take on that? I mean, would you have flexibility? Do you think that's there?
Of course. I mean, of course, we're doing history today. History hit. We're self-funding, putting it out on YouTube, collecting the revenue, and amortizing over a couple of years. So 100% we will be doing it. History is just storytelling with a factual bias, and it's really no different from that. So I think, without a doubt. But we will have to go through some growing pains in terms of learning how the model works. Kevin wasn't wrong earlier when he said a tweak of the algorithm, and we're all then going, oh, good God, we hadn't anticipated that. So the lack of control is something that maybe we need to understand as well, or at least respect when we're doing our risk analysis.
Good stuff. We are well and truly out of time, so please put your hands together. Bassetti and Jane Turton.